Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Alan Banks, and I work for Rowe Dental Laboratory in Ohio in the United States. We're the, let me turn this volume down, forgive me. We are in partnership with Quoris3D and James's company to provide Chrome GuidedSMILE and a couple of other products, but for today, for this program, it'll be Chrome GuidedSMILE. And we're very fortunate to have James and his people as a team. James kind of showed up here for a meeting last summer to inquire and to do a little research on resin printing, on printing for models and printing for surgical guides, that kind of thing. And he and I met and we talked about Chrome back in the corner of the room, and one little chat turned into 30 minutes, and then a phone call about a month later, and then a business arrangement. And now James and his team have completed dozens of cases, and I think things are going really well. It's kind of a challenge, working with a partner overseas initially, but he has just committed himself to this service, to this system, to this great product, and I can see why. We committed to it about 2.5 years ago, and we've completed about 5,000 cases in the past 24 months, and I think that's a very big number for this type of surgery. You compare us with like a Clear Choice. They're doing 18,000 arches a year in 38 centers with millions of dollars in marketing. And none of it is guided. It's all freehand work. This is a totally different modality for treating full arch rehabilitation, a complete different modality. We think much better, much more sophisticated, much more pre-planned. We are going to have a series of these courses. I think you've probably either registered for them or you've seen them. And we're going to go through kind of the process of the very beginning, which is the records, which is just kind of understanding what's needed to begin one of these cases. And in every case, it's general dentistry, just about every one of them, except for maybe a CT scan isn't always general dentistry these days. But setups and try-ins and photographs and basic dental records is all that's really needed to get started on one of these cases. And so if you've had a little exposure to it, these are the components of Chrome. We keep it simple. There's some competition out there that uses plastic guides that we think are inferior, but they also involve flexible plastic, but they also involve many, many moving parts. In fact, it takes a catalog and a lot of training and coursework to go to use one of their guides. And ours, as far as the use of the surgical guide, ours is much more simplistic. And I think that's really key to taking on a new type of surgical guidance. So let's go through the first process, and that's the records. And I threw the screen on here because James invited us over to a meeting in Ireland. James, was that Great Britain? It was Great Britain.
Great Britain, yeah, UK.
Well,
yeah.
Well, thank you. And it was a big meeting. And on the right is Thomas Kuhn. He's one of our Chrome specialists who travels the country doing chairside, kind of like what James does. And I thought this picture was kind of interesting because really what we're doing is, sure, it's current, but most people don't know about it. It seems like the future, that you could develop a surgical guide that controls every aspect of a full arch surgery. It's really incredible. Forgive me. Darn cell phones. So Rowe Dental Laboratory, and I'll just make the very first part very brief because we are simply the lab, the IT behind what Quoris3D is offering. We are kind of like the mothership in the United States that does the development, the host these online meetings. We do the back end design and so forth for Quoris, and then Quoris kind of takes the ball from there. So we have a very modern facility. We built it a couple years ago. Our lab's been in business since 1926, where I think we're the oldest laboratory in America. But we stay modern. 20 years with the company, and we are always on the cutting edge of something. And this is really the latest in that philosophy. So on with the meeting. So we're going to discuss records, how to get started with a case, and I can tell you that one of the most helpful things that we've done is put together checklists. Most cases, the surgeries are often unique, but the cases are repeat. The patient either has teeth on the top and bottom, or the patient has some lower anterior teeth and an upper denture, or the patient has no teeth, no denture. All these things just kind of repeat. But we have made checklists so that you know exactly what records to take with what presents. So, just as an example, top left, most common, single arch surgery, dentate opposing dentate. That's the most common because patients with teeth who are failing are the ones that are suffering. Denture patients are not suffering. They seem to be the last ones to take on a very expensive procedure like this. It's periodontally involved patients with teeth. The next most common one would be a patient with some teeth, maybe a partial denture, or maybe a patient who's just been suffering, doesn't go to the dentist, and now is in jeopardy because of perio problems and disease and so forth. So these checklists will cover just about every type of case that comes in, and then we have a second series of more complex cases. And these checklists are on Quoris' site. Rachel is going to send out an email thanking everybody tonight, and it'll have a link to these checklists. And I would implore anybody to print them and use them with every case that you have in the future, and then you know the records are right. The more complex ones would be somebody who has an existing hybrid, or somebody who has a locator denture. What kind of records do you take? Because there's metal substructure. There's other types of cases that can be a little more tricky with the records. But for tonight, we'll go with the most common types of cases that we see. And so let's start with dentate. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off with just general records for a dentate case. And that would be photos, which we're going to talk about, kind of go into depth a little bit about photos. And then the casts and the bite registrations, and then the CBCT scan that's always required for these types of cases. For a dentate case, this is, at least initially for the records, it's kind of repeat mode. We need upper and lower casts. We need a CT scan with the teeth apart, as you can see down here. The teeth are apart. Full face, full smile photograph. Hopefully a little bit better quality than this one, and then we'll kind of go through the quality of pictures here in just a minute. And then these 3 photographs retracted in occlusion. And we'll go through a little more detail of each of this. But these are the records for a dentate. No more than this. Very straightforward. So let's just quickly go through the photographs. We like to see a full face, full smile photograph, patient standing, hopefully not lying in the chair with their head back. Kind of tough to get the camera lens right in the middle of the nose and try to get the plane of occlusion captured with the patient lying back in the chair or leaning over sideways. So have the patient stand up. Try to have the patient's eyes level with the earth. Try to have their nose pointing towards you. One of the tricks I've always heard is put the eyes right in the middle of the orbits so that you can see white on the left, on the right, the right in the middle, and then you know they're looking right at you. Take that photo, try to keep the full depth of field in focus. I'll talk about that in just a minute. And then the photographs on the right, left, right, center, retracted, always. Dentate, edentulous, partially edentulous, those are the most significant ones for articulation. Why do we want a full face, full smile? 2 reasons. One is we make a smile simulation for every case. If it's, let me just clarify that. If it's a maxillary guided smile case, if it's a double arch case, and as long as the patient can share a smile. Quite often middle-aged men grow beards that cover their entire smile, then you can't see their teeth anymore. So we want to be able to see the teeth. We want a nice photograph. And if we have nice photograph, maxillary case or double arch, we do a smile simulation. We send this to James, and he'll share it with you. And the beauty of this smile simulation is that those teeth that you see on the right-hand side or on the top on the right, those teeth are actual STL files that we use to make the case, to make the prosthetic. And so when we do setups, we take that beautiful photo that you send us, we superimpose it over the models that you send us, and we set teeth. Because the beauty of full arch cases is that everything in the middle of those lips is removed and the teeth are put in. It's not a complicated process to do a smile simulation for a full arch patient, but it is complicated to make sure that we cover the transition line, that the necks of the teeth are behind the lips, that the incisal edges are following the lips. So that is why we want the full face photograph, mainly for aesthetics, for the two setup and for the smile simulation. So I'm just kind of going through some pictures here. These were actual cases that we did, last year, and this is what the patient saw. And we have a lot of doctors who buy this software down in the bottom right, this preview software. You can either purchase it, or you can send your photos to James and team, and they will do a smile simulation for you pretty quickly. Maybe James can add a little bit of that to the end, because I think the smile simulation serves a magnificent service to these patients.
Yeah, just to say now, it's very important. And if somebody uploads a case or they want a simulation done to have a conversation with the patient who's thinking about treatment, ping it in and we'll have it back in 24 hours to you. And you can just do it online. You can send it in to us. There's two different ways. You can just choose a smile simulation, send it in, or there is a Chrome Get Ready section on the website where you just upload the information that you have at that stage. And as part of that's a photograph. 24 hours later, you will have a smile simulation back.
Thank you. That's right. And you've seen these pictures that you have on the screen. You've seen these types of patients in these situations, and you know that they've been suffering. They're aware. They know. They've been told by their dentists and their patients and their loved ones that they have a problem, and now they're addressing it. And if they can see you can see the top tagline: "See your smile before surgery." That's been one of our mottos for the last 3 years. And that is why doctors buy the software, or they send it to us to have it done. Because when they have a patient in either in hygiene or in the consult room, and they see these before and afters, the buy-in is off the charts, especially if they're on the fence. But you see all those pictures were really good quality. I picked some very good ones out to share with you, because we have some pictures that are always questionable. I have many, many bad pictures. In fact, we do a whole course just on dental photography, just for a full face smile, because for some reason, it's just challenging. The one on the left, yes, her eyes are closed, but she's also sitting in the chair, leaning back. The camera's in the right place, but it's kind of hard to do a smile design, smile line with the eyes closed. The one on the right, the patient's just too far away. By the time you crop and zoom in, the teeth are really out of focus. Same thing on the left, in the chair, kind of scrunched up. Same thing on the right in the chair, but it's also washed out with a flash. And so I have, like I said, there's a whole program we do on bad smiles and how to make them better, bad photographs and how to make them better. But just take time to do it. This is a picture you approved to share with us. But this doctor sent us a bunch of pictures. That one didn't work. That one didn't work. That one's almost there. That's a little better. And then he got really excited. And then super excited. So we tried all these different things. Which picture's the best? Well, probably the one on the left. We get a little snobby with pictures, so his head's a little rotated and he's still sitting in the chair. But it's a good picture. And one of the reasons it's a good picture is because his ears are in focus and his nose is in focus. That means the camera is set for the full depth of field. Because when we do a smile simulation, we really want to see the enamel. We want to see the contours of the teeth. We want to see everything. And that way, when we make a smile simulation, they're perfect. So take time with the full face smile. It's worth it. And then the retracted pictures. So straight on, retracted, put the patient in their habitual centric bite. If for some reason you're opening the bite up clinically, then you can put the bite registration in the mouth, but we want to be able to see some teeth. And then left and right retracted. And I showed just kind of a picture that's kind of blown up here on the left. It's a pretty nice picture, you know, it's a little fuzzy in the back, and that's okay. This is a wonderful picture. But on the right, this is what we do with these pictures. We see, Rachel, can you see my my cursor? Does it move around? Dr. Hamill, does my cursor move around?
Yeah, we can see it, yeah.
Okay, thank you. This is what we're going to look for when we're articulating the case. The case is already articulated. We actually have dentists who work here at the laboratory evaluating these full arch cases, and I'll show you what else they do with evaluation. But we use these, how the teeth interdigitate, to make sure the case is mounted properly before we go forward. Every case. So you can see why the quality of the picture is, you know, just really important. So that's photographs, and then the next part of the record in a dentate case is upper and lower cast. Now, on the picture on the right, the video that's moving, and the lower left, those are both going to be double arch cases, and that is why the doctor captured the vestibule. And I'll explain why the vestibule is so important in a minute, but you want to take an impression that really captures all the land areas. On many of these maxillary cases, there's going to be an immediate denture. So we need the land areas, we need the post-palatal area, the vibrating line. We want the whole thing, just like you're going to make a nice, beautiful immediate denture. On the top left, that's from a digital impression. So no different on digital impression. Hold the cheeks out. It's okay if the if the frenum moves a little bit when you're taking a digital impression, but just a full land area, very important. And here's why. Because when we make the very first part of chrome, the pin guide, the thing floating up on top, the pin guide goes into the vestibule on almost every case, because every case has some bone reduction. So if we don't have that tissue land area above the teeth where the roots are, and even sometimes even below that, like this case on the lower is probably going to have a lot of bone reduction, and the pin guide has to seat down in there. We don't want to guess where the eminences of that bone is based on a CT. We want to do it based on the models. You know, and here you can see this is it. This is the pin guide in the software. You see how high the pin guide goes into the vestibule. So you see how much impression, how much anatomy you have to have in the impression in order to capture, in order to make sure that the pin guide and then the fixation base go when they're at the initial seating. Very important. Sometimes if we guess on this, because it was more of a crown and bridge impression instead of a denture impression, there can be a lot of discomfort seating this pin guide because we're kind of guessing the location of it. So very important. And the other important thing about master casts is they're very accurate. This photograph here is of a case that we did with a doctor who's completed 100 cases. This was his 100th case. And, you know, can we make this work? Yes. Do we want to make this work? No. Very accurate. So inspect them, pour them up, evaluate them. If you have digital impressions, you'll know before you hit send that they're very good. But it's just really important because the pin guide has to fit this model. It has to fit the mouth in order for chrome to start off accurately. So once all the records come in, either on James's end, which he is now evaluating cases for to make things more expeditious. He's evaluating cases. His team is. And then the cases come over to us. And so we go through a pretty lengthy checklist of making sure the records are perfect before we go to move on to the next phase. And at least 7 out of 10 cases, still after all these cases we've done, 7 out of 10 cases, they just stop with a red light for a little bit more in-depth evaluation. Some of those receive a phone of them need a little something different, but 7 out of 10. I mean, that means of all those cases, 3 of them are perfect when they come in. I think that's a little older statistic, but I bet you it's 6 that still stop. What's on the screen right now is a sheet that we use for evaluating vertical dimension and evaluating smile line. And so this is our kind of our Bible for where the transition line is going to be on a real gummy smile, how much space we need for materials. You can see this is the top of the implant, and then these are all the measurements of the screw access for different types of restorations. Here, I'll show this in just a second. On the right here, we have a lot of cases with gummy smiles. James and I are working now through a product called Chrome Natural, where you're not just reducing bone all the way down to a flat surface on every patient. Rather, on some real gummy cases, gummy smile cases where you're not going to do 2 centimeters of bone reduction, we're going to deliver more of a crown and bridge product at surgery. And so that's a little bit more beta right now, but we're on case, I think 30, and it's going really well. It's great development. It's a wonderful product for, minimally invasive, minimal surgeries. And then just some analysis of photographs, patients with reverse smile lines and how much to open a case. So many of our cases come in with deep class 2 closed bites. And we can provide that because, in fact, a lot of the things on this page can be measured and studied clinically before the records are taken. This is our parameters for final restorations. We need 12 millimeters of space for a locator. We need 12 millimeters for a conus, 12 for a Pritau, 15 for these nano ceramics that we make. We don't do many conventional hybrids with denture teeth anymore, but they're more like 16, 17 millimeters. So these kind of things are taken into account during our case evaluation. And part of this is on the doctor's end, knowing what we're going to do with these records and what records we need to do either an evaluation or to do some kind of procedure to open the bite and verify the bite. I'm going to talk about that process now, what we physically do on these models to evaluate them. Many cases are class 2 deep bites, no posterior teeth. And so put me on hold for just 1 second, okay? There's a little bit of background noise. I'm going to ask him to just keep it down. Be back in 15 seconds. Thank you, sorry. Deep bites, very common. No posterior teeth can be it can be an issue because most of these cases we have to open the bite. And so what we do, I'll show you a little video here, but you kind of know what that looks like. What we do, and this is a great technique for clinical evaluation of vertical dimension. As you can see, the title here is don't trust this hit and slide bite. More than likely, this particular patient without any bicuspids is contacting the anterior and probably sliding. They probably wore some grooves in over the years, and so we don't really trust this bite very often. So you can do a couple things. You can do traditional dentistry, make a bite block, perform a setup, process it in acrylic, go through the normal processes of making a partial denture, establish the bite, establish the vertical. And then you could send that actual flipper or partial. You don't really need to, I put process acrylic. You don't really have to process the acrylic because you're not going to use it. It's really a disposable item. I'll remove that. Establish the bite and then send the records into James. And that is how we would start this type of case because you will have opened the bite a little bit by then. This particular case, this is a 17 to 18 millimeter Shimbashi measurement. Now, Shimbashi was a dental technician who developed this rule of averages. And what we espouse this at the laboratory because this is a simple measurement going from the gingival zenith of, say, 8 or 9 to the gingival zenith of the opposing tooth, so 25. So if this measurement here is 17 to 18, that vertical dimension, according to averages, is fine, and it's a perfect distance for us to move forward with the case. But on this particular case, We're concerned about the lack of posterior teeth and still would want to confirm a bite. So you can either go through these processes, these conventional denture processes, or number 6 down there, the JC Try-In. This is something we developed here at the laboratory that is a digital option for doing a bite confirmation. It's essentially a flipper made digitally. James is designing these. You'll probably go back and forth with James on these types of cases. So if you're pretty confident of the bite in this case, send it in. If we think we need to do a little bite confirmation, we'll make the JC Try-In and we'll send it to you. You will seat both of these just like a flipper, equilibrate it if you need to until it's fully seated, and then put the patient in the bite. If the bite is perfect, just the way we set it up, you can just return them, and that's how we. You can if you don't make any changes to them at all, you can just keep them. We don't need them. If you equilibrate them, if you grind it into the occlusion, or if you add to it to open the bite, any changes at all, take a new bite between them or on top of the only one, physically send it back to James, and that's our green light. We know we've confirmed a bite. This video will just quickly demonstrate a JC Try-In. It's a double arch JC Try-In. Let's play this video. We want to open up the patient's bite, and the case was submitted as. So what I'll do, because I already spoke about this, so the models come in. We'll do an evaluation. This patient has no defined contacts, no positive contacts. You can see around both arches, no teeth really coming together well. So you'll send us either a mush bite or a bite block, or even a closed centric bite. That's okay too. On this type of case, we may have had to open up the patient 6, 7, 8 millimeters, 9 millimeters. Well, we don't want to just do that on the articulator. If we do that on the articulator, the bite will be wrong in surgery. It just doesn't work. Our maximum opening is 3 to 4 millimeters. Any more than that, we're making a JC Try-In, or we're having a chat with you about some other method of opening the bite and confirmation in the mouth. So with JC Try-In, we'll make both of these, equilibrate them, and then you'll take a bite registration after you adjust, and then send all the items back. Then we digitize it, and then we move forward. Now you'll notice on this JC Try-In, maybe at the very beginning, it had these little markers in it. If you're familiar with dual scan, like on a fully edentulous case, you do a dual scan with some markers. Sometimes, let me show a picture of it here, right here. These little markers, we may have to put markers on a JC Try-In if the patient only has a couple of teeth left, or maybe just a few teeth, because you'll need to do a dual scan. And we can talk about that later as we talk about edentulous records. Those are little markers. This is very infrequent. This would be a patient with almost no teeth where you do a dual scan technique. Otherwise, again, general dentistry, JC Try-In. So this is another case where the patient is severely closed, missing many teeth. Patient has mobile teeth, and the bite registration really was only captured on a couple of teeth. And so the bite, we don't trust the bite. The bite's also closed. It's only 10 millimeters. If we can even find a gingival zenith on number 8, it's 10 millimeters, meaning this case needs to open a minimum of 6 millimeters. So if you have this case, you took the measurements in the mouth, it's 10 millimeters, you say, we're going to open this bite. How are we going to do it? You are going to send us upper and lower casts and the photographs or to James. He's going to articulate it. He's going to open it. He's going to make you a JC Try-In and send it back. Now, sometimes if you say, I know this patient has bone, I know that this case is going to go forward, I just need to open the bite, then just send all the records in. Casts, photographs, CT scan, send the cast with with the bite in centric, or do some records on your own to open the bite. Send all the records to James, and then we either move forward with your opening, or we make you a JC Try-In and then return that to you. Almost 80%, I'll put a number on it, I hate putting numbers on it, but the majority of cases that come in here are closed bites. Very, very few perfectly healthy bites, come in. So would recommend to always take measurements of this Shimpashi. I'm not sure if I added the slide in here, but there are two measurements you can take. One is Shimpashi, which you want 16 to 17. The other is an intervestibular measurement from the upper vestibule in the anterior to the lower vestibule in the anterior, and that should be about 35 millimeters. That means that so if the patient's missing most of their teeth, they don't have any anteriors, you can do an intervestibular as well, and that kind of gives the same averages. But in this case, this patient only needs to be opened up 2 or 3 millimeters. They're at a 13, try to get them to a 16 or 17. We can do this on the articulator, and we do this almost every case, not do a try-in. Patient has a lot of teeth that interdigitate, articulate, open, and we move forward. So in this case, you would send us all the records for a dentate case. This is just kind of showing the, a JC try-in and what we accomplished, right? 11 millimeters here, up to 17 here, opened it up with the JC try-in. It's really a wonderful tool. Works great. And there's not much worse than going through this whole process. It's expensive. The patient has a perception of what's going to happen, and the bite was not accurate, and then you have a lot of adjustment at surgery. Because we worked out this system so well, bites are almost always dead on or need a little bit of adjustment, a little bit of equilibration, but really worked it out nicely. And it all, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it always does start with the records. I did put a slide here about intervestibular, so 35 millimeters. Put the patient in occlusion, to just take a simple measuring device and see. This case, this is actually the same case left and right. Push play here. This is a difficult case. This is not just capture records and send them to James and we're off to off to the races. This will be probably a bite block, probably a setup and try in. Get the teeth in the right place until you're happy with it, until the patient's in the right vertical, maybe speech, lip support, that kind of testing, and then we're moving forward. It's a little more challenging of a case on this one. We see a lot of class 3 cases. Patients who should have gone through orthodontic surgery at one point but did not, and now we're in this position and probably don't want to get into the whole philosophy of changing class or not changing class, but we found for the most part you keep the patient in the class they presented. Prosthetic, you're kind of really pushing the limits of prosthetics on our end when we try to change class, but then you're really pushing it on patient's function, TMJ, that kind of thing. So we try to stay in the same class. Again, I don't want to get into the philosophy of it. That will be up to the to the doctor, but usually these cases will stay in a prognathic position, but same records. We've seen cases come in where every tooth is mobile, and this can pose a problem. We will need to know if every single tooth has mobility, especially high mobility, because there's major challenges. One is, are the records right? Probably not. They moved around in the PVS. The other is, how does that initial guide seat? If you put a pin guide in and all the teeth are mobile, well, all the teeth are going to move, and then everything is in the wrong position. So there's two choices with these types of cases. Either find which teeth are immobile, which are ankylosed, and let us know which ones those are. And those are the ones we'll rely on mostly for the pin guide so that we are comfortable with moving forward the case and you. And the other is we want to know if you could take a digital impression or not. Now, sometimes with digital impressions, you move the lips to one side and the teeth move on the other side. So some of these are just really, really challenging. We've done them. In fact, the pin guide, you can kind of push all the teeth into the pin guide and you can use the palette to hold the pin guide in the right place. The lower is obviously a little more challenging. On the lower, this tooth would have to be extracted first. maybe even some others around the arch. You extract them, then you use the ankylosed teeth that are left. So we just have to have a little chat about highly mobile teeth. It does happen. The other option is, of course, extract all the teeth, put the patient in immediate dentures, let them heal, do a hard reline, and then we go forward with chrome, down the road in several months. Those were the records for dentate. Crown and bridge records, some removable workup, that type of thing. Edentulous is a little different animal because of reference points. So let's go through that process. So there's checklists for it. The one on the left is a single edentulous checklist, and with an opposing denture. And then there's single edentulous with opposing dentate. And then of course there's double edentulous, which that's kind of a unique surgery, but the records are the same. On an edentulous single arch, you always have to do a dual scan technique. If the patient has an existing denture, terrific. If the teeth are not perfect and they're a little bit, maybe a little bit out of place, a little bit out of, not totally in line with exactly what you want the denture to be, that's okay. If you have a stable bite and you have an excellent fit, you can use that denture. If the denture moves around, it's not stable, do a hard reline. Don't really want any soft relines. If you have a soft reline, you want to use a blue mousse reline for the CT scan. You can talk about that in a little more detail. I think I have a slide on that. It's something we just developed recently. But if it's edentulous, basically the records are single arch, the denture on the top. It doesn't look like a denture because we printed it here, a duplicate of what you scanned. But you would take a denture, you would put markers on it, scan markers, 6 of them. I'll show that in a minute. You take the dentate opposing, and you would take a bite registration. And the physical models that you send James are in this case, the lower dentate model or impression, the bite registration, and then you would send him a dual scan CT. Those are the records, along with the photographs. And those are easy to follow on the checklist. What we do not need is a model of that upper denture. If we can't see the intaglio, then we can't mount. So all you have to do is take the patient's existing denture, put 6 markers on the denture, perform a dual scan, and that's what you'll upload to us. So dual scan means you scan the appliance in the mouth, in occlusion. That's one scan. Then you take the denture out of the mouth, and you put the denture on the CT scanner, and you scan it by itself. And we use those markers to bring the two together. That's how we register the denture. That's how we see the denture, because it's plastic. And if you take the denture scan in the mouth, the denture doesn't show up. All we see is hard and soft tissue. But if you scan it by itself, then we can change the resolution. And then we merge the two together. The picture down here in the middle, these are gutta-percha markers. You're welcome to do gutta-percha, just a number 8 round burr with gutta-percha in it, 6 of them randomly around the denture, and do a dual scan. That was pretty simple, since we've already been through a lot of the records. That's edentulous single arch. Edentulous double arch, I have a checklist for it. This will be upper and lower dentures that fit well. The nice bite, tooth position is good. And you scan both dentures in the mouth together, and then you scan the dentures individually. I thought that was a video. So this is what the CT scan will look like. The top 2 is upper and lower. Top 2 are scans of the dentures alone, by themselves, sitting on a piece of foam in the CT scanner. The middle pictures are the patient. You see how the denture doesn't show up? But as soon as we register the denture and bring it in, it shows up. All right, so 1, 2, 3. And then this is showing the lower denture in place, the dual scan. That's the only way we can see the denture in the mouth, is doing this dual scan technique. Please don't send us impressions of the denture. Don't send us models with the dentures in the mouth. This is a completely digital process. 3 CT scans, photographs, upload. That's it. Let me just mention this too. If the dentures are not to your satisfaction, we can do some tweaks. We can move teeth. We're going to do a total reset. If the patient is too far labial with their anterior teeth, we can bring them back a few millimeters, even sometimes several millimeters if the denture was just made, not well. Very, very important that the dentures fit, because if the denture doesn't fit, if it rocks, the pin guide will rock. And if the pin guide rocks, the implants are in the wrong position. So yes, these are tissue supported guides, but how the denture fits is how chrome fits. Very, very important that the denture is a perfect fit. So again, don't send us, we don't need impressions of the arches or the teeth, anything, all edentulous. Partially edentulous, very common. These are compromised patients who've been getting by sometimes for decades. Sorry, don't mean to laugh, but always compromised. And if the patient does have a partial, we developed this technique where this patient happens to have implants. That's a little bit different discussion, but they have partials. So this would be a situation where you would take a CT scan of the patient without the partials. So take a CT, have the patient bite on cotton rolls, keep the teeth apart, take a CT. That part's done. CT's done. Now you send us 2 sets of models. You see the ones on the left, that's with the partials out of place. And the one on the right is the partials in place. That's how we articulate the case. The pin guide will fit on the one on the left, but the tooth setup and the articulation and vertical dimension and everything will be designed from the one on the right, the study cast. Really neat technique. So this case is photographs, CT scan with cotton rolls, keep the teeth apart, no partials in the mouth, and then study models and models without the partials. Checklist, it's all in the checklist. If you have digital impressions, you can do the same thing. On the left, you can see they took a took a digital scan with the partial out, digital scan with the partial in. You can see a little clasp here and some anterior teeth. We will use this scan to do a setup to put the teeth in the right place and move forward with the case. Or sometimes, open the bite and do JC try-ins. But as far as the initial records go, that's what you would do. Again, partially edentulous case. So this particular case, the patient has 1 tooth. I think maybe 2, maybe this tooth broke off. This is not a crown and bridge type record taking. This is let's make an immediate denture that surrounds that 1 tooth. You can leave the tooth in, but let's do a denture setup, put the teeth in the right place, establish vertical lip support, everything you would do to do a denture, and then you would perform a dual scan technique and basically send the records for a partially, for a dentate opposing a edentulous. So I had some videos here, but they're really just a kind of a recap of all the records that we just talked about. So that is my records presentation. Went a little bit over. I think we expected 30 minutes, but I am very happy to take questions, many questions as you have. Rachel, if you want to turn the cameras back on or not. You could do them audibly, or we could do chat. If we have a chat feature on this, Rachel.
Yes, if you go down to the chat button at the bottom, you can type in a question, if that's what somebody wants to do. There has been a question has come in, which is about taking the records in a partially dentate case where the patient is wearing temporary dentures or partial dentures already. Whether you want the records, I'll let you answer, but whether you want the records with the dentures in place or the records with the dentures not in place.
Right. Okay. And that was one of the last things we covered.
Yeah.
Let me pull up that slide just so we're on the same page here. This is a patient that's partially edentulous. The patient has partials. This patient even has an upper and a lower partial. So the records, and I'll just go through this real quick. The records are, you want beautiful master casts of the patient without the partial seated, no bite, and then put both partials in the mouth, or one partial in the mouth. Take a study model of those arch of that, or that arch or those arches, a bite registration. Those are the physical records, and then take a CT scan of the patient without the partials, and open biting on cotton rolls, and that's all listed on that checklist. Is there
I think the thing I would add is if the existing partials are at the closed vertical and you're increasing the vertical, you're probably best to take the initial records with the dentures out, take your impressions, send them in. We'd make you a JC try-in, send that back to you and record them at an open vertical. So I think it depends a little bit on whether the vertical is where you want to finish the patient or not.
Right. And let me just add that the patient has kind of worked in their bite over the last number of years with those partials. So you could send both in, and that way you can at least get the pin setting with the partials in, and then cross mount that with the ones with the partials out, and at least you have a starting point because it's probably open. James, if it's not already open, obviously if they're already in occlusion, you don't need to do that. But yes. Sometimes the patient has a partial that's maybe most of a denture that's holding the patient open a little bit, and that would be, you can make the determination.
Yeah, we'd need that information.
Yeah, especially if the bite is a lot easier to confirm with the partials in. What else? Any other questions?
Another question that I've received as well, and it's sort of moving forward, and it's a friend of mine who's very interested and really know an awful lot about chrome, and that's to do with, he's mad keen to know about the conversion element at the end. But I basically explained to him that will come if he continues to watch the webinars.
Okay.
We can't cover everything in 30 minutes because there's a lot of information to cover.
Yeah, and I can tell you that the conversion process will be a heck of a lot better if you follow all these steps that we talked about today in this meeting. Yeah. But the nice thing about the conversion, I'll just in 10 words is, if you've done it all on 4, then you're in surgery from 7:30 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon, unless you've got it down to a real system. And 2 hours of that is the lab in there trying to figure out how to make this denture into a hybrid. Our conversion is 15 minutes. I do it myself. It's plugging some holes. It's not difficult. Maybe adjusting a little titanium on a cylinder. Oops, that's more than 10 words. Anyway, James, I mean, it's.
Yeah. I'd say it's that the time saving is significant. So another question has come in. Are all intraoral scanners supported?
Well, okay, they're all supported because we'll accept an STL from any scanner. I would caution against the True Definition scanner. I don't know if they even sell it over there, but that's the 3M scanner. You have to use powder. You cannot powder a vestibule on a palate consistently. Not going to happen. I would be a little bit cautious of any older Carestream scanner. I wouldn't use the 3500. Probably use the 3600. Definitely the 3700. I wouldn't use any old Cerac. Maybe the OmniCam if you have a lot of experience with it. Certainly the new Prime Scan is terrific.
Yeah.
But only the 3M would I say no, and the older Carestreams. And let me just caution against it. Shine has some scanners too. The Emerald scanner I found a little tricky, and certainly the Plan Scan. Forget it, won't work. James, if anybody wants to ask about a specific scanner, I can definitely have that conversation.
Yeah, as far as we're concerned, we can accept anything that's an STL file as long as you can export it. I know with the Sirona systems that, as far as I am aware, there is an extra payment that you have to make to be able to export the file in an open format.
Or you just go through Connect and you or we can download STLs. We can handle that free.
Yeah, that's true.
Let me mention this too. If you have a scanner that I mentioned, you can always pour up your models and scan your models. Then you don't have to worry about saliva. Works great. And then you're digital. If you're on a different continent, you're somewhere else, you can, anyway, that's a nice technique.
Yeah. And then does the chairside scanner need to be open? Basically, as long as you can create an STL file, then we can work with it.
Yeah, and James and us, we are connected to all the portals. I know that there are more digital impressions in Europe than there are here. You folks seem to push through new technology earlier than we do. If you can get an STL, we work with it. If there's a portal and it's in Europe, James will connect with it. If it's one of the main ones, we can help him. Either way.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, we'll take the records really in any way we can, as long as the records are good.
Yeah.
Another question's coming in. Do you have to have a full dual arch scan, or can you scan both arches separately?
For CT scan?
Yeah.
We actually prefer to have scans separately. We'll take either. There are some scanners out there that will scan the whole head, and there are some scanners that are just 6x8 that can only do a chin to the top of the lower teeth, so they're limited. Either one. We'll take either one. One thing unique about Chrome that's different than a lot of other companies out there is that we do not use a CT scan for occlusion. We use your articulated cast for occlusion. And so therefore we want your CT scans out of occlusion and take them separately. Either one. Either way is fine.
It's been a big issue for us has been that a lot of the scans that we've received, the teeth have been together. Even if you're doing a partial, a guide for an upper 3 or an upper 4 and a 5, you must have the teeth apart, or we can't section it and work with it. So that's one thing that's very, very important.
Right, and sometimes even if the patient is partially edentulous, sometimes we can still work those out. If they have a lot of overjet, or they have a buccal overjet, labial overjet, we can still register a model. There are tricks to it. And James, we can help you a little bit with that. But but cases can be rejected because they're just interdigitating too much, and we cannot see anatomy, and we can't register a model. That's a big problem.
A question, or an additional to that question, a particular person is finding that 8x8 is very difficult to get all the information in. It's easier to do an 8x5 single arch. Therefore, I presume provide two scans, which is fine.
Yep, for sure.
On the website, and maybe Rachel can put a link to this, Ro have been very good and done a whole list of videos about all the various scanners on the market, and a lot of them are cross continent anyway, and those are little guides for taking scans. There's also a PDF on our website that outline information for taking guides and are taking scans and things that you need to be aware of when you take the scan for different types of cases. But like all of this, we're radiating patients. So if anybody has got any questions prior to taking the scan, they just need to ask, and we'll come back with the information.
And for everyone listening, my advice has always been, even to our customers long-term on Chrome, if you have a question, just pick up the phone and call. I know, and James will take the call, because it's going to be a headache for you especially, but for him, for everybody, if the records aren't right. And all these cases can be completed if the records are right. Just call and have a chat about it. This is my patient's current condition. What do you need?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So if there's any more questions, then that's great.
There's just one more question coming there on the chat.
Oh yeah. Is the bite fork sufficient to keep the teeth apart when taking a scan?
Yeah, well, as long as it's plastic. They always are, right? They're always plastic. Of course it is, yeah. You can always use the bite fork. That's perfectly fine. Yeah. In fact, that holds their head steady.
Yeah. Sometimes cotton wool, you might, depends on, I found somewhere maybe teeth are over erupted and things just a little bit uneven, that if you add a little bit of cotton wool, it does help. However, the cotton wool generally can make them more unstable. And the other tip that came in actually from a customer of ours, we have it on our website, which is to use cotton wool between the cheeks and the teeth, which will help take the soft tissue off. And that can help in terms of clarity of the scan. And the next one is if there's a lot of metal, if the patient has a lot of metal in their mouth, then the scatter can be a problem. And if you're worried about that, then we can make a scan appliance, which the patient will wear over the top of their teeth, which will help keep the scatter down.
Yeah, and let me mention that scatter historically has always been a problem, and we have almost completely overcome that. It would have to be a lot of metal. It would have to be a patient with basically all gold crowns now. So we've really overcome that, fortunately. And let me mention that one important thing, we said we always have to have the teeth together. Remember, on an edentulous case, when you're scanning with a denture, the teeth have to be together, always, which means you're going to put the patient in a chin rest instead of a bite stick. Yeah. Very important for if the patient has single arch, double arch, edentulous, put them on the chin rest.
Okay. That looks like it might be it. Alan, just a quick thank you from ourselves over here. Wonderful information. I think it's clear that you guys definitely know what you're talking about. We have got our next webinar again next Wednesday at the same time. It's a series of 6, I think. And please log in and get the information, because this will build. This is only the first of a series, so more and more information will be coming, and it is important. It's a very exciting treatment modality, and the planning is superb, and you will see that as we go through the weeks. If you have cases that you're interested in sending in that you want to discuss, then please do so. There is a place on the website to do that, or you lift the phone, as Alan has said, and we'll talk you through whatever we need to talk you through. But generally speaking, if you have a case, it's 6 to 8 weeks from that patient coming in until the box arrives, once everything has been done. And just to give you some idea of time frame, it's obviously open system for all implant systems out there. We are even, and we have done already, created guides for systems that have never done guided before already. That availability is out there should you need it. So if you have a system that you're using, and it doesn't have a guided kit, don't worry, we can generally make it work.
And James, you have a mechanism for chairside support, correct?
Yeah. So I suppose what we're doing is our promise at this stage is that if you have a case, you let us know. We'll work with you to help you upload it. Kieran and Emma Jane are both in the office, and they will help you do that. I'm also available, certainly for any clinical things, and we're working together as a team along with Alan and his guys to make sure that the records are correct. Once the case is uploaded, then it goes through into planning, and we will be back in touch with you for a planning meeting, which is directly with the planners in the US. And once that case is planned and approved, it then goes into manufacture. At that point, we then recommend that you book the patient in. And please let us know and keep in contact with us, because diaries are busy. We want to get their chairside. It's very important that the first experience of this is a positive one. And there are lots of little nuances. It's like using anything, and especially using guided surgery like this for the first time. There are things that you need to know and be aware of. And in the panic of a clinical day, things can be forgotten about. And it's useful to have somebody, me or some of the team, standing there who understand the system well and can just point you in the direction nice and quietly from the background. And we're very, very happy to do that. In fact, we're encouraging every case that's coming in. We have, I think, 12 cases going in January, that we will be chairside for them all.
Let me mention on the chair side, as I mentioned before, highly recommend it, because our goal, when James comes chairside, whenever we come chairside, our goal is that we only want to come once. That's our goal. We'll come again, but our goal is to make sure Chrome gets implemented correctly, make sure the staff, the team, everybody knows how to convert the prosthetics simply and follow the system, and then they really don't need a laboratory anymore for this type of case. They don't need it. It's not an all-in-4 conversion. It's not heavily laboratory intensive during the whole day, the whole 2 or 3 hours of surgery. You don't need a lab guy.
Yeah, I think it's important to say the surgeries, once you get up and running, you've got a few under your belt. It's 2.5 hours, 3 hours maximum to go through from local anaesthetic to the delivery of the provisional restoration. And you do not need a chairside technician. It is not required. And that's sometimes difficult for people to accept and get their head around. And that may well upset a few people out there, but that is the reality. That's the reality of the system. So that's the way it's been designed to be used.
Yeah. So if there aren't any more questions, I hope everybody tunes in next week. We're going to start at the first phase of a surgery, which is the pin guide and the fixation base. Getting started.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alan.
Okay. Thank you, James. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Thank you.
Shout out to Emma Jean.
Yeah, she's just said thank you there.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Super. Thanks, Alan. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.